Waitress humiliates poor customer, then realizes he owns the restaurant. The glass hit the floor before anyone could stop it. Coffee, everywhere, splashed across the worn, wrinkled hands of an old man sitting alone at a corner booth. And standing over him, arms crossed, lip curled, was a young waitress named Brittany, eyes cold, voice loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "Sir, I've told you twice already. You need to order something or leave. This isn't a homeless shelter." The entire diner went quiet. Every single person turned to look. The old man didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. He just slowly looked up at her with these calm, tired eyes and said, "I know." And then he smiled. If Brittany had known, really known, who that old man was, she would have dropped to her knees and begged him to forget everything she just said. But she didn't know, not yet. And what happened next? Nobody in that diner saw it coming. Not the customers, not the manager, not even the old man's own son. This story will make you angry. It will make you cry. And by the end, it will remind you of something you may have forgotten, that the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest ones. Stay with me, because this story changes everything. If this kind of content moves you, hit that subscribe button right now. Every single week we bring you stories like this one. Real, raw, unforgettable. You don't want to miss what's coming. Rewind 3 weeks earlier. His name was Gerald Cole. 71 years old, silver-haired, walked with a slight limp from a knee surgery he kept putting off because he said he was too busy. He wore the same style of clothes every day, plain khaki pants, a simple button-up shirt, and old leather shoes that had seen better decades. To anyone passing by, Gerald looked like a retired school teacher, maybe a grandfather killing time on a Tuesday morning. Nobody would have guessed the truth. Gerald Cole was the founder of Cole & Sons Hospitality Group, one of the largest privately owned restaurant chains on the East Coast, 47 locations, 3,000 employees, a company built from nothing over 40 years of 18-hour days and sacrifice most people couldn't imagine. But Gerald had a secret he kept from nearly everyone. He didn't run the business from an office. He ran it from the inside. Every few months he would dress down, no watch, no phone, no driver, and walk into one of his own restaurants completely unannounced. He would sit. He would watch. He would listen. He called it the real audit. Because numbers on a spreadsheet could lie. But people showed you exactly who they were when they thought nobody important was watching. And on this particular Tuesday morning, Gerald Cole walked into Rosie's Diner, the very first restaurant he had ever bought 22 years ago, the place that started it all. He slid into the corner booth, the same corner booth he always chose, and he waited. Meet Brittany. Brittany Hawks was 24 years old, and absolutely certain that this job was beneath her. She had been waitressing at Rosie's for 8 months. She was smart, genuinely smart, and she knew it. She had taken 2 years of business classes at community college before dropping out. She had big plans. She just hadn't figured out the path yet. In the meantime, she was stuck in a diner uniform, carrying plates of eggs and refilling coffee cups, and every single day she let herself and everyone around her feel that frustration. She wasn't always cruel. That's important to understand. There were mornings when she was sharp and funny and the customers loved her. There were tables she lit up like a lamp. But there was also a pattern, a dangerous one, where certain customers triggered something dark in her. Old people who moved slowly, customers who didn't tip well, anyone she had quietly decided wasn't worth her time. And Gerald Cole, sitting alone in his worn clothes with no phone and no fancy watch, landed squarely in that category. She walked over without a smile. "What do you want?" Gerald looked up pleasantly. "Just a coffee for now, please, black." Brittany wrote it down. 1 coffee. She went to get it, came back, set it down without a word, and moved on. Gerald sipped his coffee slowly. He watched the room, the way the other staff moved, the way orders were handled, the way customers were greeted or not greeted. He watched Brittany most of all. He had a gift for reading people, always had. And what he was reading right now was making him deeply sad. The first incident. 20 minutes passed. Gerald's coffee cup was empty. He sat quietly looking out the window. He wasn't bothering anyone. He wasn't taking up space anyone needed. The diner was only half full. Brittany passed his table 4 times. She saw the empty cup. She kept walking. On the 5th pass, Gerald raised his hand politely, gently, and said, "Excuse me, miss. Could I get a refill when you get a chance?" Brittany stopped, looked at the empty cup, looked at him. "Are you ordering food?" Gerald smiled. "I might in a few minutes, just enjoying the morning for now." She stared at him for a beat too long. "This isn't a park bench," she said. "We need tables for paying customers." She walked away without refilling the cup. The man in the next booth, a regular named Dale who had been coming to Rosie's for 15 years, heard every word. He looked over at Gerald with an apologetic expression. Gerald just shook his head softly and smiled. "No need," he seemed to say with his eyes. "I've seen worse." But Gerald reached into his shirt pocket and took out a small leather notepad. He wrote something down. He always brought the notepad. Nobody ever asked what was in it. The humiliation. It was another 10 minutes before the moment that changed everything. Gerald had decided to order. He was reaching for the laminated menu tucked behind the napkin holder when his elbow caught the edge of his coffee cup, the empty one Brittany had never refilled, and it tipped off the edge of the table. It hit the floor and shattered. The sound made several people jump. Gerald bent down immediately, trying to pick up the pieces. "Stop, stop, you're going to cut yourself." It wasn't Brittany who said that. It was a younger waitress named Holly who rushed over with a cloth and knelt down to help. But Brittany was right behind her, and Brittany's face was not kind. "Sir," her voice was sharp, loud, designed to be heard. "Sir, I've already had to come over here twice. You've been sitting here for over half an hour, you haven't ordered anything, and now there's a broken cup on my floor." Gerald looked up at her from his seat, calm as still water. "I'm sorry about the cup," he said quietly. "I'll pay for it." "It's not about the cup," Brittany said, her voice rising just a little more. "I've told you twice already. You need to order something or leave. This isn't a homeless shelter." There it was. The words that silenced the whole room. Holly froze on the floor, cloth in hand, staring up at Brittany like she just watched someone step off a cliff. Dale in the next booth set down his fork. An older woman near the window pressed her lips together and looked away. Gerald didn't raise his voice. He looked at Brittany with those calm, steady eyes, and he said simply, "I know." And then he smiled. Brittany blinked. She had expected embarrassment, defensiveness, maybe anger. The smile threw her completely. She turned and walked to the back, muttering something under her breath. Holly quietly finished cleaning up the broken pieces. When she stood, she leaned down to Gerald and whispered, "I am so sorry about that. Can I get you anything, anything at all, on the house?" Gerald patted her hand. "You're very kind. A fresh coffee would be wonderful, and I'll take the eggs Benedict, please." He opened his notepad again, wrote something down. Here is what Brittany didn't know. Here is what almost nobody knew. Gerald Cole had grown up with nothing. Not the romantic kind of nothing. Not the kind people say when they mean they grew up in a modest house with love and family dinners. The real kind of nothing. A father who disappeared before he was 5. A mother who worked 2 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on consistently. Winters where the heat got cut off. Summers where dinner was whatever the food bank had left. He had been hungry as a child, genuinely hungry, the kind that stays in your body even decades later. At 17, he got his first restaurant job washing dishes. He was terrible at it. The head cook used to yell at him every single shift, but Gerald kept showing up. He kept learning. He kept watching. By 22, he was managing a small diner in Baltimore. By 30, he had saved enough to buy it. That diner burned down in a grease fire 3 years later. He lost everything, rebuilt from scratch. By 45, he had a chain. By 55, it had grown beyond anything he had ever dreamed. He had been the man with no money in the corner booth, more times than he could count. He knew what it felt like to be looked through, to be treated like furniture, to have someone's impatience settle over you like a cold shadow. He had made himself a promise back when he had nothing. If he ever built something, the people in his restaurants would be treated with dignity, every single one of them. That was the foundation of Cole and Sons, not the food, not the locations, the way people felt when they walked in. He wrote it in the original business plan, 20 years ago. Every person who sits down at one of our tables deserves to feel like a guest in a good home. And right now, sitting in Rosie's diner, the first restaurant he had ever bought, the place he considered the soul of his entire company, he had just been told to leave like a vagrant. He wasn't angry. He was heartbroken. Gerald ate his eggs Benedict slowly. Holly checked on him 3 times, refilled his coffee twice, asked if the eggs were okay. He told her they were perfect and he meant it. He left her a $60 tip on a $12 meal. On the tip line he wrote, "You have a gift, don't let anyone dim it." He left a $2 tip for Brittany, not 0. Gerald wasn't the kind of man who used money as a weapon, but he was meticulous, and he needed to record what he had seen. He paid at the register. The woman at the register was the shift manager, a tired-looking man in his 40s named Tom, who hadn't witnessed the incident himself because he'd been in the back handling a delivery. Gerald smiled at Tom, "Good morning." Tom smiled back, "Morning, have a good one." Gerald walked out into the sunlight. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment looking at the painted sign above the door, Rosie's Diner, the red letters slightly faded, the way he'd always left them on purpose. He liked the idea that the place looked lived in, loved, not polished to the point of being soulless. He sighed. Then he got into the car that had been waiting for him half a block away, a black sedan, no markings, and he said to the driver, "Let's go back to the office." The phone call. 3 days later, the general manager of Cole & Sons Hospitality Group, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia, got a call from Gerald himself. Gerald almost never called directly. He had a whole team, systems, processes. When he called himself, it meant something. "Patricia," he said, "I need you to pull the staffing file for Rosie's on 5th. She pulled it, got it. What are we looking for? There's a waitress there, young, mid-20s, dark hair. Name might be Brittany. I need everything, her reviews, customer feedback, disciplinary notes, all of it." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then, "Should I be concerned?" "I'll tell you what concerns me," Gerald said, and he read from his notepad, every detail. The empty coffee cup, the comment about the homeless shelter, the way the room went silent, Holly rushing to help while Brittany stood there with her arms crossed. When he finished, Patricia let out a long breath. "This isn't the first complaint about her," Patricia said carefully. "We've had 2 comment cards in the last 6 months, neither specific enough to act on, but the tone was there." "And Holly?" Gerald asked. "Spotless record. Customers love her. Tom's been trying to get her promoted to shift lead for months. There just hasn't been an opening." "Make an opening," Gerald said. Patricia paused again. "And Brittany?" "Don't do anything yet," Gerald said. "I want to handle this one personally." The return. Nobody at Rosie's knew it was coming. 2 weeks after the coffee incident, on a Wednesday morning, A sleek black car pulled up outside the diner. The driver got out and opened the back door. Gerald Cole stepped out, but this time, he didn't look like a retired school teacher. He wore a charcoal gray suit, the kind of posture that fills a room. Behind him came Patricia, carrying a leather portfolio, and behind her, two men in business attire who nobody recognized. They walked into Rosie's diner at 9:45 in the morning. The first person to see them was Holly. She was wiping down a table near the door, and when she looked up, she froze. She didn't recognize Gerald immediately. Why would she? But something in the way the group moved told her body to pay attention before her brain understood why. Tom came out from the back. He saw the group. He saw Patricia. He knew Patricia had spoken to her on quarterly check-in calls, and something clicked behind his eyes. He walked over quickly. "Patricia, I didn't know you were visiting." "Good morning, Tom," Patricia said warmly. "Is there somewhere private we could speak? And could you gather your full floor staff? We have some things to share." Tom glanced at Gerald. Gerald extended his hand. "Gerald Cole, good to meet you in person, Tom." The color drained from Tom's face, so fast it was almost visible. The meeting. They gathered in the back room, the staff break room with its round plastic table, and the motivational poster on the wall that had been there so long nobody read it anymore. 5 waitstaff, Tom, the kitchen manager, everyone on shift, including Brittany. She stood near the back of the small room, arms loosely crossed, head slightly tilted. She had no idea what this was. Corporate visit, maybe. Some kind of inspection. She wasn't worried. She'd been through inspections before. Gerald stood at the front of the room. He didn't have a presentation. No slides, no props, just that calm, steady presence. "I want to start by thanking all of you," he said. "This location has been running for 22 years. That's a long time, a lot of breakfasts, a lot of people walking through that door looking for something simple, a hot meal, a decent cup of coffee, maybe just a few minutes of not feeling alone. You've provided that for a long time, and that means something." He paused, looked around the room slowly. "I started this company because a place like this saved me once. When I was young and broke and didn't know which way was up, I walked into a diner just like this one, and the woman behind the counter treated me like I mattered. That's all. She just treated me like I mattered. I never forgot it." The room was silent. 2 weeks ago, Gerald continued, I came into this location as a regular customer. I didn't announce myself. I sat in the corner booth, ordered a coffee, and I watched. Brittany's arms uncrossed. Something moved across her face, a small, cold wave of recognition. The old man, the coffee cup. No, that couldn't be. I witnessed something that I hope we never see again in any location with our name on it, Gerald said. A customer, an older man, sitting alone, bothering no one, was spoken to in a way that no human being should be spoken to in a place that claims to offer hospitality. He didn't look at Brittany when he said it. He looked at the whole room. I was that customer. The silence that followed was the loudest silence most of those people had ever experienced. Holly's hand went to her mouth. Tom looked like the floor had dissolved under him. And Brittany Hawks, 24 years old, smart and frustrated and lost, went the color of chalk. The moment of truth. I want to be clear about something, Gerald said, his voice still measured, still calm. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I've been in the food business for 40 years. I know what burnout looks like. I know what it looks like when someone is in the wrong seat at the wrong time in their life. That doesn't make what happened acceptable, but it does make it human. He looked around the room again. I also want to recognize something I saw that morning that moved me deeply. He turned slightly, found Holly's face. There was a young woman on shift who, when I knocked a cup off the table, came immediately, not because she was asked, not because her manager told her to, but because it was the right thing to do. She apologized for something that wasn't her fault. She asked what she could bring me, and she did it all with genuine kindness. Holly's eyes were full. "Effective immediately," Gerald said. "Holly is being promoted to shift supervisor at this location, with a corresponding raise. And we are opening a management trainee position, the first step toward a restaurant manager role that Holly will be first in line to interview for if she's interested." Holly didn't speak. She just nodded, tears sliding quietly down her face. Then Gerald did something nobody expected. He turned to Brittany. Directly, no avoiding it. Brittany looked like she was waiting for an axe to fall. "I'm not firing you today," Gerald said. The room seemed to exhale. "But I want to offer you something instead, something I didn't have when I was your age and needed it most." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a card on the table in front of her. "That is my personal contact. Cole & Sons runs a professional development program, partly my idea, partly something I wish had existed when I was coming up. It covers communication, leadership, business operations, fully funded. I believe you're smart enough to make something real of yourself, but you're going to have to decide what kind of person you want to be." He looked at her steadily. "Treating people as beneath you is a choice, so is choosing differently." Brittany stared at the card on the table. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were bright, not with arrogance anymore, with something that looked a lot more like shame. She didn't say anything, but she picked up the card. Here is where the story takes a turn that none of them, not Tom, not Holly, not Brittany, not even Patricia, knew about. After the meeting, as people slowly filtered out, Gerald asked Tom to stay behind. When the room was empty, Gerald sat down at the round plastic table and folded his hands. "Tom," he said, "I need to tell you something about this location." Tom nodded carefully. "I've been thinking about retiring," Gerald said, "properly, not just stepping back, actually retiring. My kids are grown, my wife wants to travel. I've been doing this for 40 years and I think it might be time." Tom nodded slowly. He wasn't sure where this was going. "When I retire," Gerald continued, "I'm planning to transfer a portion of ownership in specific locations to long-standing staff, a profit-sharing model. It's something my lawyer's been drafting for about a year." Tom sat very still. "This location," Gerald said, "is the one I'd like to start with. It was the first. It means the most to me." He paused. "I've been watching you manage this place for 9 years, Tom. You're not perfect, but you're honest and you care, and you never cut corners on what matters." Tom stared at him. "What I'm proposing," Gerald said, "is a partial ownership transition. 15% to begin with, over 5 years with options to increase. This place would still carry the brand, the supply chain, the support, but you would have real stake in it, real say." Tom opened his mouth, closed it. "You would also," Gerald added quietly, "have the responsibility of building the culture here back to what it should be. Starting with the conversation you clearly need to have about how vulnerable customers are treated in this building." Tom's eyes dropped to the table. "I should have caught it sooner," he said. "I should have." "Yes," Gerald said simply, "but you didn't know, now you do. The question is what you do next." He stood, buttoned his jacket. "Think it over, take a week. Call Patricia when you're ready to talk seriously." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "One more thing." He looked around the small break room, the plastic table, the motivational poster, the coat hooks on the wall. "Don't change too much in here when you fix the place up. Leave some of the worn edges. Places that feel too perfect stop feeling like home." He smiled. And then Gerald Cole, founder of Cole & Sons Hospitality Group, walked back through the diner he had built his life around, out through the front door, past the slightly faded red letters of the sign, and into the morning sun. Holly accepted the promotion. 6 months later, she started the management trainee program. She was 26 years old when she became the youngest restaurant manager in the Cole and Sons group. Tom accepted Gerald's offer. He spent 3 weeks barely sleeping, talking to lawyers, calling his wife from the parking lot in the evenings. He eventually signed. On the day the paperwork was finalized, he stood behind the counter of Rosie's diner before the morning rush and he cried. He didn't know why exactly. He'd never owned anything before. It felt terrifying and enormous and like the thing he'd been waiting for without knowing he was waiting. And Brittany. Brittany Hawks quit 2 weeks after Gerald's visit, not because she was pushed out, because she finally got honest with herself about something. She enrolled in the Cole and Sons development program that fall. It was harder than she expected, more humbling. She sat in rooms with people who'd been in the industry for decades, and she listened, really listened, for maybe the first time in years. Gerald checked her progress reports occasionally. He never reached out directly. He didn't need to. 18 months later, she sent him a handwritten note, 3 sentences. You didn't have to give me a second chance. You didn't even have to be kind to me. I'm going to spend a long time making sure I deserved it. Gerald kept it in his desk drawer, next to the notepad. Here is what I want you to take from this story. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly in a corner booth with an empty coffee cup, wearing old leather shoes, saying nothing. The way you treat people when you think they don't matter, that is who you actually are. Not the version of you that shows up when the boss is watching. Not the version on your best days. The version that comes out when someone can't give you anything, when it would cost you nothing to be unkind, when you're tired and frustrated and the world feels unfair. That version, that's the truth of you. Gerald Cole knew that better than most, because he had been that old man in the corner booth in every way that counted, before he ever had a company, before he ever had power, before anyone would have looked twice at him. He never forgot what it felt like. And he never stopped testing whether the people around him had. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear it today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Every week we bring you stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Hit that bell. You don't want to miss what's next. Because the next story, it's even more powerful than this one.